27, 1 Samuel 27. And before we start that, though, we just need to remember all of those that are on the sick and injured list. Luke is with us today. He's feeling some better, waiting for the final cure on that, though, is him getting a tooth out. Terry, I hadn't spoken to him much about it this morning, but he looks like he's feeling fairly well, but he's still medication messing around. Rosie's back, and she looks a little bit more level-footed with that new knee. Tina's still on the outs. Okay, she's real depressed now, so keep her in the prayers. The Moody's, Sister Dot, they're still working with trying to get all the test results and everything and see what they need to do next on testing her. Also, need to keep Holly in our thoughts and prayers. She is finally, they've gotten around to the insurance and everything, so starting in January, she's already got a whole list of doctors to go see, plus looking for a referral to go to the one that she really needs to go to, which is going to more than likely require back surgery. She wanted to be with us today, but she just couldn't, so need to keep her in our prayers also. Anyone that I have missed in going around the room on the sick? Okay. Brother Sumlin, would you lead us in a prayer, please, before we begin our class?
Our gracious and loving Heavenly Father, we're so very grateful for the opportunity we have to come together and study a portion of your word. And our hope and our prayer is that everything we do this morning will be done in accordance with your will, to be a sweet-smelling savor to you, done in both spirit and in truth. We have a lot on our prayer list this morning, Lord, and we ask that you please strengthen and comfort them as only you can. Be with this Bible class this morning. Please be with Brother Sadler as he has prepared a lesson. As he is studied throughout the course of the week, help him deliver that lesson in a prepared, focused, and organized fashion, and help us as a student body to examine it and use it where applicable in our everyday lives. Guide our directness in all that we do. Forgive us of our sins when we ask for forgiveness and repent. In Jesus' name, amen.
Chapter 27, 1 Samuel. If you have read this already and looked at it and studied it, I've got a question for you, because to me, the first verse is kind of odd, at least to me. And I'm going to give you why I think that and then see what you think about it. And we have to look at the life of David before we get to this particular point. When he was young and a shepherd, he tended the flocks. He killed lions, bears to protect the flock. When he went to check on his brothers that had gone to war, he was caught up in the middle, and he went out to fight a giant with no military experience and won. But at that time, he said that was because, and I'm paraphrasing this now, but basically it was because the Lord was on his side. God was on his side. As we go up, he fights the Philistines and wins, and Saul is after him, but he won't harm Saul, but he tries to get Saul's attention several times. And then, as Brother Terry ended his class Wednesday night with the last verse of chapter 26, again, David had gotten Saul's attention, so Saul left off, wasn't going to chase David anymore. But now, when we look at the very, very first verse, it said, "And David said in his heart, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul." That's the sentence that got my attention. How come David knows God is with him through all these battles, even the giant, and now that he gets to this point, and he's gotten Saul's attention one more time, and Saul has basically told him, go your way and I'll go mine, at this verse, he says, I'm going to die at the hand of Saul. What you think?
Feeling the same thing that Jesus did as far as praying, let this cup pass. So we have this humanity side of this. It's gotten down as far as running.
Okay. So what Brother Terry said was, could this be the humanity side of him, that Saul has been chasing him to the point where he really can't trust Saul, because every time Saul says everything's good, it's not very long before he changes his mind and starts going after him again. And I sort of feel that same way, that even though he knows on this hand excuse me, that God is with him, how many times do we go back to a saying, and I don't like this saying, but we say it a lot, human nature. You see, I think we control our own human nature. But here, how often do we know that something can take place and that God's on our side, but we always come back with that little hint of doubt? And that could be where we are with David. Yes, sir.
When you look at Psalm 23, Psalm 22 sets the background of all these bad things that are going on. Seemingly, no one cares about David at that time until he comes chapter 23. It's a completely different idea as far as what God's going to do.
Thou art with me, yeah? Yes, ma'am. I would agree with that, but a few chapters later, David is over with the Philistines and is getting ready to go do battle with the Israelites. And who's the leader of the Israelites? It's going to be Saul and his family. So it just seemed a little odd there, perplexing. It gives you something to think about. And then he follows it up with, there is nothing for me in that I should speedily escape in the land of the Philistines. And Saul shall despair of me to seek me any more in the coast of Israel, so shall I escape out of his hand. So that part goes along with what you, Alyssa, said, that if David just completely removes himself from the area, maybe Saul will forget that he's got animus against him and not want to do him harm. Sort of out of sight, out of mind type thing. So David is willing to completely leave the area, but look where he goes. He goes to the land of the Philistines. Verse 2 then just says he arose with his 600 men and left. And now if you look at verse 3, it says, dwelt with Achish at Gath, he and his men, every man with his household, even David with his 2 wives. So as we had mentioned in earlier classes, it appears as though when the 400 came to be with him, that they brought family with them. So that little cluster of folks was more than just the fighting men that came to be with him. In verse 4, it was told Saul that David had fled to Gath, and then Saul sought him no more again. So again, going along with what Alyssa said, it appears as though with David removing himself from the area, that Saul is not going to go all over the world chasing him. He's sort of out of the way right now. We'll continue on down, and if you look at, we'll skip down to verse 8. Well, we'll back up a little bit. David had told Achish that, give me some place to go that I can take care of things and be your servant. I don't need to just be here and stay with you. And he had given him Ziklag. And then in verse 8, it said, David and his men went up and invaded the Gershurites and the Gerzrites and the Amalekites for those nations were of old the inhabitants of the land, as thou goest ashore, even unto the land of Egypt. And David smote the land, and left neither man nor woman alive, and took away the sheep, and the oxen, and the asses, and the camels, and the apparel, and returned and came to Achish. Why did he go out and do battle at this point against those folks? He had left his homeland, moved into the land of the Philistines for safety, security, to get away from Saul. Apparently there was no reason for him to go do battle, so why did he go do battle? Okay, so he was trying to help Achish. When we get that had been given, and they had not fulfilled that, and they were still sort of basic enemies of old and all. The one thing that you said, he probably had a pact with Achish to bring him spoil and all. As we go through here, we'll find out that with him destroying everything, he didn't take anything back to him. But let's skip on down to verse 11. David saved neither man or woman alive to bring tidings to Gath, saying, lest they should tell on me, saying, so did David, and so will be his manner all the while he dwelleth in the country of the Philistines. And Achish believed David, saying, he hath made his people Israel utterly to abhor him, therefore he shall be my servant forever. So if you tie all that together, it appears as though even if he didn't have a pact with Achish, he was trying to do something to win Achish over, and here he did, because Achish now says, we're good to go. Yeah, we fought before, but now you my friend. Brother Clunch.
Could he also be saying, Saul, I'm powerful enough to defeat this place, so you don't need to come after me anymore?
Very possible he could have been sending a message to Saul, but here it just seems like there's a kind of a transformation with David, because up to this point he hadn't wanted to go out on his own and do any fighting or anything, and now it appears that he did. Questions or comments on 27? Yeah, and as we get a little farther into it, don't know if we'll get there today or Wednesday night with Terry, but we'll find out that there was still animosity between the Philistines as a whole and David. But yes, sir. Yeah, because what had he done previously? He had taken his family to where that was also their enemy for safety out of Saul's reach, to Moab. The Israelites and Moab didn't get along either, but David had moved his family there for protection while he was out in the wilderness or out wandering. Anything else on 27? As we get into 28, it came to pass in those days that the Philistines gathered their armies together for warfare to fight with Israel. And Achish said unto David, know thou assuredly that thou shalt go out with me to battle, thou and thy men. All right. So David, from being anointed as the new king after Saul's departure, has left his country. He has gone into the country of people that he has fought before. And now this fella says, you're going to go out and fight with us against your home country. David said to Achish, surely thou shalt know what thy servant can do. And Achish said to David, therefore will I make thee keeper of mine head forever. So if we want to look back at him going out and taking on all these people and with just his 400 men and fighting and winning wars, and now Achish can rely on him to protect him. So Achish says that they're going to go to war with him. Now, at this point, how many princes are there of the Philistines? 5. So when it says all of them got together, it would be like here in the United States if 5 states got together to do something. So these territories, these princes over the territories, all of the Philistines were divided up into those 5, and now they were going to get together and do something, go to war. Verse 3, though, reminds us that Samuel is dead and that they had buried him and lamented over him. When we get down to verse 5, it says, when Saul saw the host of the Philistines, he was afraid and his heart greatly trembled. I know some of us in here have been in the military, others closer to frontline warfare than others. I know from talking to people that in here, I believe that if you're looking at mass conflict, Brother Price has probably been closer to frontline warfare than any of us in here. And that was in Korea, fighting against the North Koreans and the Chinese that were helping them out. And he has told me stories about how they would start to charge and things of that nature. So if people have never been to the front line and seen the enemy rushing toward them, I don't know if we can fully comprehend what Saul was going through here. But Saul has his army together, and as we've gone through before also, that back in those days, the camps were pretty close together. They could spy on each other, look at each other, and then by numbers alone and by equipment, one could get a little bit of fear in them. Brother Golden, you had your hand going up. Okay. Okay. But here, and he's even gone out, and he's even gone out with him at this point. Okay. Verse 6 then says, and when Saul inquired of the Lord answered him not, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by prophets. You got to ask yourself why Saul inquired of God when Samuel, before his death, had already told Saul that God had left him and had chosen somebody else to replace him. But here he has inquired of all this, and people know what dreams are, prophets are. But what would be the reason they use the word Urim here? U-R-I-M. Inquired of that. Urim and Thummim. It was just another way to consult God, if you want to just break it down into sort of simple terms without getting into detail. Then Saul said unto his servants, Seek me a woman that hath familiar spirits, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servant said to him, Behold, there is a woman that hath a familiar spirit at Endor. Previously, Saul had shut that business down. He had gotten rid of, told all the wizards and other things that people shouldn't have anything to do with them. But here in verse 8, Saul disguised himself. He personally went to the woman. And the woman in verse 9 said unto him, Behold, thou knowest what Saul hath done, how he had cut off those that hath familiar spirits and wizards out of the land. Wherefore then layest thou a snare for my life to cause me to die? And Saul sware to her by the Lord, saying, As the Lord liveth, there shall be no punishment happen to thee for this thing. So at this point, we'll find out as we read on, the woman did not know that this was Saul. Saul had disguised himself. But also, she knew what the regulations that Saul had put in place, and she didn't want to be caught in a trap and then have to pay the penalty for it. So Saul, being in disguise, told her that that wouldn't happen. She trusted him. And then she asked, Whom shall I bring up unto thee? And he said, Bring me up Samuel. Now, there's a long, fancy word that tells about what kind of person she is or what her particular belief is as far as wizardry or the occult. It's called necromancer. Basically, that just means somebody that communes with the dead. Today we call them mediums or hold seances to speak to the dead and all like that. But she is purported to be one of those. And when the woman saw it was Samuel, she cried with a loud voice and spake to Saul, saying, Why hast thou deceived me? For thou art Saul. Now, because of this person wanting to speak to Samuel the prophet, all of a sudden she starts putting two and two together and comes up with four and knows what's going on. And she is afraid for her life because she has gone against what Saul had said originally. But Saul's going to protect her. And now Saul brings up Samuel to talk to him. In verse 16, we can skip all the way down to 16, and it said, Then Samuel asked Saul, Wherefore then dost thou ask of me, seeing the Lord is departed from thee and is become thine enemy? In other words, he's saying to Saul, Why are you bothering me? Haven't I already told you that the Lord has left you? Haven't I already explained to you that there's going to be somebody take your place? So why inquire anything of me? Then when we look at verse 19, Moreover, the Lord will also deliver Israel with thee into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow shalt thou and thy sons be with me. The Lord shall deliver the host of Israel into the hand of the Philistines. So what did Samuel, in essence, tell Saul on this inquiry? Tomorrow you die. You, your sons, Israel is going to be left to the hands of your enemy. Yes, sir.
A good example is the silence of God. It doesn't give you the liberty to do anything that God hasn't said. There's no proof God hasn't said anything to you about this. We're not free to then go and say, well, we're going to find all these answers and go ahead and do it.
Correct. We don't know why at this particular point Saul and the Philistines were even in conflict. It just seemed like they were sort of the favorite enemies of each other, and periodically through the years they would go and do battle for sometimes no particular reason. But that's what's taking place here. The last section of this chapter 20 through the end of it deals with Saul being upset, fearful, lays prostrate on the ground, refuses to eat because of the anguish he's in, and then this medium convinces him to, along with his men, they convince him to eat. And it says she had a calf in her house and killed the calf, and then they all sat down and eat. And then they rose up that night and left. It seems like I'm going through these chapters kind of fast because we need to get through 5 chapters by Wednesday night. And I was hoping that if we made it at least halfway through, that Brother Terry then could do the last 2 and then go back and sort of do a survey or whatever we want to call it before we change subjects and get into a new subject next week. Because starting in January, we're going to go back and start with the New Testament again. So questions or comments then on chapters 27, 28, or anything previous? Yes, ma'am. Well, that's an excellent point, because we know that those people really don't have power, but here it seems that by God's intervention. So yeah, that very well could be. Good point. I hadn't thought of that one. But yeah, you want to commune with the Spirit and all of a sudden it happens. Anything else? 29. Now, as the Philistines gathered together all their armies at Aphek and the Israelites by the fountain in Jezreel, David, all of them were passing by in troops, hundreds, thousands, and all like that. And then it said that David, verse 2 says that David passed with his men on the rearward, and I guess be basically bringing up the rear with Achish. And then verse 3, it talks about all the princes then got together and was upset about this. And verse 4 says, the princes of the Philistines were wroth with him. And the princes of the Philistines said unto him, make this fellow return, that he may go again to his place which thou hast appointed him. And let him not go down with us to battle, lest in the battle he be an adversary for us. For wherewith should he reconcile himself unto his master? Shall it not be with the heads of these men? So the 5 princes, when they got together, saw this going on, they decided that they didn't want David with them, because David might just decide to turn back to Saul, and then he would be in the middle of them, and they could do real damage. Did they have any reason to feel this way? Logic. What had David done to them right after he killed Goliath? Who was Goliath? Philistine. After that, David went and pursued and killed a bunch of them. Remember the song, the reason that Saul was against and was mad at David. What was that song? You don't necessarily sing it, but what was the phrasing of the song? Saul has killed his, and David has killed 10,000. The Philistines knew this, so now they know that David had been their enemy at one point, and now what makes them think that he is going to stay true and be with them all the way through the fight? The closest thing that I can get to that is that I don't know this firsthand. I have never, I was not in the military branch that dealt with this firsthand. I only know this through study of history. But in every battle that's been fought, seems like from eon on, people make alliances. Enemies make alliances with enemies because that enemy at that particular time is against somebody else. In World War II, how many agents were there that were not agents but were double agents? How can you trust somebody that you go into France, for instance, and the French have been fighting against you, but now all of a sudden they want to fight against the enemy that you're fighting? How can you take them into your confidence and really trust that they're going to be on your side the whole time? It seems like a matter of convenience. If you look at the Middle East right now and what's going on over there, how many people have been slaughtered, and I'm using that term the way I want to, slaughtered by people who you believe are on your side, but now they're walking around in your camp with weapons and then decide to turn a weapon on you in the dining hall or at the police hall. So you can sort of understand here why people would have this kind of doubt that David would remain true, because also this is an opinion, it doesn't say it anywhere, but because David had been appointed by Samuel to take over the kingship after Saul was done in, did the Philistines not know that also? Yes, sir. Exactly. So you can sort of see how things are going here. But this worked out best for David in the long run, because now he didn't have to go up and fight against his own country. Verse 7 says, "Wherefore now go," and Achish has been talking to him and told him what was going on, and said, now return, go in peace, that thou displease not the lords of the Philistines. So in essence, David had a small band of people if you really look at the total army there. So one thing you didn't want to do was make them mad and them turn on him at that point either. So he goes back, and the last verse of that, verse 11 says, "So David and his men rose up early to depart in the morning, to return into the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Jezreel." So the battle was going to take place between Saul and his army and the Philistines without David being around and having to get involved in any of it. Questions, comments on this chapter? Chapter 30, verse 1. "It came to pass when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag and burned it with fire." Verse 3, "David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives. Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep. And David's two wives were taken captive." So here, it doesn't seem like it is retribution, because what had David done when he had gone out? Killed them all. Wasn't anybody left to come and fight him, but the group that did come in to do this, they took spoil. They took the women, the children, the animals, took it all. Verse 8, "David inquired at the Lord, saying, Shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, Pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all." Now, previously, it doesn't indicate that David had inquired of God when he had decided to go out and do any of the other fighting. Didn't appear that David had inquired of God when he was going to go out with Achish and the Philistines to do fighting. But here, he did inquire. Verse 15 says, "David said to him, canst thou bring me down to this company? Well, let me back up a little bit. Here they run into between 9 and 14, in their travels, they bump into this guy that had been sick, an Egyptian, that had been sick and left behind. And so David is asking him if he can lead him to the main camp. David said to him, canst thou bring me down to this company? And he said, swear unto me by God that thou wilt neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will bring thee down to this company. Now, this is just what we've been talking about. Here, there's this fellow that's been left behind because he's sick. Was that the logical thing to do? In those days, yes. Today, we don't leave people behind. Here, he was captured by an enemy. And what's going on? They take care of him, and then David asked him, can you take me down there? It doesn't appear that there was any torture or anything of that nature. David simply asked him a question. But the fella, being in captive hands, is so afraid that what does he do? He gives up his buddies. I'll do anything you want me to do as long as you promise me that you won't hurt me or you won't turn me over to them so they can hurt me. That is one of the things that I personally am grieved about a lot with some of our military today. I believe some of our military, rare occasions, I don't believe that they will stand strong as some of us older folks were brought up to do. One example I have is when the Iran took the boat with the sailors. It really dismayed me that there were sailors out there who were groomed to fight, shedding tears on TV and looking afraid. That part was not the military that I know. I don't know how the rest of you feel about that situation. It reflects back to, and I don't want to get into politics on this, so we're just going to leave politics completely out of it. But John McCain in the Vietnam torture camp, the torture he went through. But yet, and he was also Navy, he was a Navy flyer, but he didn't give up anything. So contrast two different age groups, I guess.
Well, it's a different time, and these guys didn't have a JAG officer on board. Our military battle has become like the Russians with their commissars, where they have political officers with them, keep them in mind. And that's pretty much what is happening to the United States military. If you're taking fire, you can't turn fire until you get to the JAG to see. It's an impossible situation.
Well, I have to agree with you. But it's not just a recent thing either. During Vietnam, for instance, everything had to be approved through the White House. And back in those days, the communications was not instant like it is today. And so by the time they said, can we bomb this location? And then it came back, all of a sudden, they wasn't there anymore. That is I've got a phrase for that one, that we snatch defeat out of the mouth of victory. The United States had Vietnam won, but due to politics and other things, they call it a stalemate, but basically we lost Vietnam. We did not win that war. It was not a stalemate. We got kicked around pretty good on that one. little bit off topic here. But then he said, yeah, I'll take you to them. Verse 17, David smote them from the twilight even unto the evening of the next day, and there escaped not a man of them, save 400 young men who rode upon camels and fled. And David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives. So this time David had asked of God what he should do, and he said, pursue them, you're going to get everything back. And in the end, that's exactly what happened. 400 ran away when they saw all of the commotion going on, but he killed the rest of them and got everything else back. Verse 21, David came to the 200 men which were so faint. David took 400 with him and left 200 behind because the 200 was weak. They had to stay there. And then some of the group that was with him that defeated the enemy and took back that plus all the spoils, they didn't want to share anything with the ones that were left behind. Verse 22 starts out, then answered all the wicked men and men of Belial, of those that went with David, and said, because they went not with us, we will not give them aught of the spoil that we have recovered, save to every man his wife and his children, that they may lead them away and depart. So the ones that did the actual fighting, they didn't want to share anything with them except give them back the property that belonged to them. And then David said, ye shall not do so, my brethren, with that which the Lord hath given us, who hath preserved us and delivered the company that came against us into our hand. For who will hearken unto you in this matter? But as his part is that goeth down to the battle, so shall his part be that tarrieth by the stuff. They shall part alike. And it was so from that day forward that he made it a statute and ordinance for Israel unto this day. So David is sort of seeming to come back around to his good senses now. Wise judgment. You got 200 men that are so weak that they have to be left behind. They can't go into battle. They can't do anything. But the ones that win, when they bring back all the spoils, this group didn't want to give that group anything, but David says, no, we're going to all share alike. Now, can you imagine what kind of conflict there would be, or what kind of trust there would be, that if these men had had their way, now they're no longer a team. It's every man for himself. Can you imagine what that would, precedence that would set for future events? Brother Terry, you had your hand going up.
Pretty much like Jesus going to the marketplace throughout the day and hiring people. That the ones who came late as well, the first ones were a little bit upset what's going on.
Good answer. Brother Terry had brought up the parable in the New Testament where those that had went out first thing in the morning, and then those at noon, then those a little later, they all got paid the same thing, and the ones that worked the hardest fussed about it, but God come back with a good answer, didn't he? Is this not what you agreed to? Verse 26, when David came to Ziklag, he sent of the spoils unto the elders of Judah, even to his friends, saying, behold, a present for you of the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. And then it goes down the rest of the chapters just listing where all he sent stuff. But if we go back to where we started the class, and him going down and fighting, and Achish saying he has made himself an abomination to the Israelites by doing all of this, now what does he do when he sends gifts to the Israelites? Is he not making peace with them? Okay. So he just sort of turns it around there. If somebody's been mad at you or you've been mad at somebody, and you hear a knock at your door and go to the door and open it and see that person, doesn't it sort of lighten the atmosphere if they come bearing gifts versus just standing there? Bell rang. I'll have to leave y'all with that thought. I thank you for your comments and your attention.